Third time lucky. Apparently I've got an issue with data management. Right. Okay. Yep. Beards are useful. Okay. So this is what I've written. The die is cast. I've always felt that things weren't quite what they seemed, but I could never quite put my finger on it. It was always there, but just out of reach. A feeling or emotion that I didn't recognise. Something intangible. I'd watched the troubles as a child, and the conflicts back to back in the Middle East through my teens. The tensions with the Soviets. Then came a quiet time, late 90s, relative calm. Sure, there were still problems, but nothing major. Then the Twin Towers. The big game changer. Watching that unfold was like watching a child stung by a bee, destroy an entire garden, trying to exact a rage-fueled revenge upon its unknown attacker. None of it added up, and I remained quietly sceptical. Around 2009, I saw a documentary about how money was made. I was staggered. Fractional reserve banking. An astounding revelation, the knowledge that money was literally made from absolutely nothing. I thought, the ultimate con. So, if they can get away with that, what else are they doing? 9/11. Truth. Soon came onto my radar. Realities that were ignored, witness testimonies, ridiculed, and a myriad of coincidences that all fitted together was even more stunning. It didn't take long to find this thing called New World Order. It sounded so ridiculous at first, I took it with a pinch of salt, but it just kept popping up, all over the place. I couldn't ignore it. So, I dived into that rabbit hole, head first, and the Cheshire Cat was smiling, and I may well have become the Mad Hatter. The same people, the same companies, the same families, all tied up in an amazing web, but all undoubtedly connected. The term New World Order has been used by world leaders over and over again for the last 30 years. Presidents, prime ministers, they've been telling us what they are doing. But only if you listen will you hear it. I came across Agenda 21. It's quite interesting. It talked about resources, movement of people, green energy, population reduction. Face value didn't seem too bad. It scratched the surface and it took a pretty dark turn. Now we have Agenda 2030. Some of the things in this are no-go zones of countrysides for humans. We will have to live in super cities, no private property. You will get an apartment suitable for your needs. Everyone gets a standard wage. No one gets more than anyone else. We will be equal. Only some will be more equal than others. You won't have your own transport. You won't need it. All energy will be renewable. And that's just some of it. Now these agendas are straight from the UN. That, along with the WHO, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, interestingly, private set-up organisations, and all part of the web I mentioned, are primed and ready to step in through these crises and give all nations the right direction and loans to fund the appropriate actions, like an overarching government would. And that is, as far as I can tell, exactly what's happening. Now, I'm not saying this bug was a creation of the aforementioned organisations, although I wouldn't be surprised. But think back. We've had a lot of pandemic horror stories thrown at us over the last 20 years, most of which were quite nasty, but went nowhere. Then, bird flu, swine flu, H1N1, SARS, to name a few. Most of which were quite nasty, but went nowhere. Then we get corona. Statistically, we've got a 99.78% chance of survival. Pretty good odds, I'd say, but blown out of all proportion. I'm not going over all that. Do your research if you haven't already. Anyone with an ounce of sense can see that our economies have been destroyed. It has been done through blind incompetence or with willful intent, and I cannot see how anybody could actually be that naive and hold a seat in Parliament. And here is my point. Sorry, very difficult to get hold of the pages. Any reasonably intelligent individual could see quite clearly 6 months ago that what this bug really was, and how economically we as a nation could not continue with any further restrictions. Yet, over 500 MPs voted for lockdown 2.0. This leads me to a simple conclusion. Our entire government and Parliament, including the House of Lords, are actually working against the best interests of our nation in the name of globalism. Sounds ridiculous, right? Now look at almost any government in the Western world. It's exactly the same. All our civil service organisations are also complicit. Upper echelons of the police, NHS, fire service, armed forces are all going along with it. And these people are no fools. Over the last 20 years, all the right-wing people have been nudged out of civil services, and any that try to join are viewed as right-wing racists and therefore unwelcome and unlikely to move up the ladder. So the old guard retired, or got so despondent that they left of their own accord. The schools have progressively got more and more left-wing, with less and less balance. My kids were taught to hate their race and their nation. It's been a long game. We've been played beautifully. I put it to you that all these entities are actually becoming enemies of the people. For those of you involved in civil service, I've been there. I know what the pressure to conform is like, and yes, it could cost you your job, but if you do nothing, it will cost your children and your grandchildren their heritage and their wealth, and above all else, their freedom. Don't be an enemy to the very people you care for most. We've all had the good fortune to enjoy the comforts and securities that our forefathers have provided us. Your ancestors, like mine, built the freedoms we have enjoyed with blood, sweat and tears of generations. They fought in the fields and streets of Europe and Asia. They braved the stormy seas. They cared for the sick and injured. Some of your ancestors came here with nothing from far off lands to build a future for you. They worked tirelessly for us. And now we have all but thrown it away. The shame of your ancestors lays heavy at your feet.